Hi guys, welcome back aboard good old Athena for yet more DIY fun. We're still waiting for some materials to show up and the hunt for a stainless guide that can do some small tweaks to our soul arch with the arch still mounted on the boat is still ongoing. So this week we'll tackle some smaller projects on our to-do list.
If you're new to our channel, my name is Mads and this is my fiancée Ava. I've spent the last 5 years doing a somewhat extensive refit on my 1987 Warrior 38 named Athena. That involved all kinds of fun stuff like building a new rudder using vacuum infusion, gutting most of the interior to make structural repairs, and then subsequently rebuilding most of the interior. I also rebuilt the entire deck and painted the top sides. All of that fun is documented in hundreds of videos here on YouTube.
In a little over a week, our new flooring is going to show up and it's going to look super awesome and I'm very excited about it. So next week is going to be all about getting ready for that flooring. That means reinforcing some areas of the cabin sole, painting the toe kicks down here, and also mounting some lights down by the toe kicks. That's going to look really awesome. But yeah, this week is all about some smaller projects. All the stuff we've got here on the kitchen island are for those smaller projects. It's a good mix that I think you guys will enjoy. We have a DC socket here, we have a USB charger, we have a USB pass-through for the nav station, there is a high bilge water alarm, little NMEA 2000 digital thermometer, there's a battery monitor, and then there's the butt sprayer 2000. And a little bit later, Ava's gonna bust out our new Sailrite sewing machine to take it for its inaugural flight. But let's start with these two doohickeys. This is the butt sprayer 2000 and this is the vent for the poop extractor. So let's get those tasks moved into doing. Both of these are for the head or the toilet. See, in here in the shower area, we have an industrial strength fan. As you can see right now, it's not exactly a thing of beauty, but it is very efficient. Every 30 seconds or something like that, it replaces all of the air here inside of the head, which means it's great for getting rid of the humidity after we've showered or for extracting unpleasant smells. It is a tad on the loud side, but I think that's okay. It's very good at what it does. A bit of sealant and 4 screws. I wish every boat project was this easy. The vent cover is going to eat into the airflow a little bit, but it looks a heck of a lot better. That's the first task done. If they were all that easy, we could bang this thing out in a week. But let's move on to the butt sprayer 2000. I fully realize that some people are probably a little bit grossed out by the topic of poop, but I do have it on good authority that most people do in fact poop. Now, some people may be unsettled by a bidet sprayer, they might not fancy it, but Ava and I switched briefly to the dark side during the great toilet paper shortage of 2020, and yeah, these things are actually pretty nifty. I shall spare you guys the graphic illustration of how this thing works, but there are a couple of big upsides to using this thing on a boat. It has less reliance on toilet paper and also less toilet paper in your holding tank. This is just a regular household butt sprayer 2000, so figuring out how to install it on a boat was a little bit of a journey. Specifically how to hook this guy up to our pressurized water. Then I found this guy, and the problem over here seems to be that these are not commonly used for through bolting through plywood, oddly enough, so finding one with a long neck was a little bit of a challenge. But I finally found one that has plenty of room for through bolting it through the plywood, a 90-degree fitting here, and then a hose barb, and then we should be good to go. After having mounted the little holder doodad and drilled a hole and mounted the wall thingy, this is what it looks like. I think it looks pretty neat. It's not super intrusive. As you can see, there is no valve on this thing, so I want to add a ball valve so we can close this if we need to, and also just to regulate pressure in case we don't want to get sent to the moon. I've got said ball valve right here and a T so we can tee into our existing pressurized water system. So let me go ahead and chuck this in there. Now, without any further ado, let me present the butt sprayer 2000. That is going to work just fine. Now you might be thinking, wait a minute, Mads, why go through the trouble of installing a bidet sprayer on a sailboat? Well, for one, it's a personal preference, and also it's going to cut way down on the amount of toilet paper we're going to have to carry. We can use our solar panels and our water maker to make water for the bidet sprayer, but we cannot manufacture toilet paper, so I think there's real merit to having a bidet sprayer on a sailboat. That's another task we can move into the done column. Now let's move on to this guy, DC outlets. In terms of power, we have the ability to generate all the AC we could ever want, but for charging smaller stuff like phones and tablets and stuff like that, it'd be nice to be able to charge straight off of DC, both as a bit of a second way to charge as a backup, and also to avoid the loss that's associated with going from DC to AC and then back to DC. When it comes to DC outlets, I am only familiar with two real options. One is the classic cigarette lighter plug style, and then there's of course the option of going straight to USB-A. I'm sure somebody's gonna tell me that I should only be installing the cigarette lighter style plug because that gives more flexibility because you can swap out the charger that's in there. And while that is true, I've often experienced that those chargers can develop a bit of a wonky connection in there, which then leaves you with a not so nice setup. So we're going to be installing a mix of the two. For instance, here at the nav station, there's going to be one of each. At some point in the future, I'm sure USB-A is going to be a thing of the past. But once that happens, it's still going to be easy to swap out this thing because these all seem to have the same diameter. So I'm pretty sure this is some kind of standard. Also here at the nav station, we're going to be installing this guy, which is a USB pass-through. So this guy gets connected to the little Mac Mini underneath the table, and then we have two very easily accessible connections up higher where they're easy to get to. Because right now, when I have to import footage into the Mac Mini, I have to crawl under the table, which is not that great. I made a little mistake and drilled 3 holes up here, figuring I'd put all 3 plugs up here, only to find out that the cables for the pass-through were too short to reach from up here down to the Mac Mini. So I relocated the pass-through to down here, which I think is going to work out great. The only downside is now we'll have to fit an extra USB charger plug. These doohickeys are from Blue Sea and they're 4.8 amps each, so they should be able to charge a cell phone pretty dang quick. So yeah, let's get these wired up. Another cool thing about the plugs are that they'll work off of both 12 and 24 volts. Now the cigarette lighter pluggy thingy, of course, that's going to be off of 12 volts, otherwise we might be in for a nasty surprise someday. With 2 of these, we're going to be drawing a maximum of around 10 amps. That is on 24 volts, and that means this 2.5 square millimeter cable plants us firmly in overkill territory, but it's the only gauge I've got here on the boat right now. I've got a 15 amp breaker in my distribution pan. These are going to be drawing a maximum, let's say 10 amps, so that's going to work out. And with the 2.5 square millimeter gauge cable, I don't need to worry about adding a smaller fuse to protect the cable. The 15 amp is perfectly fine for that. I guess it would be a good idea to start putting labels on these breakers, but yeah, I just haven't gotten around to it yet because I want to kind of group them in a logical way, and I'd better just wait until I've got most stuff wired up. But yeah, let's see if this works. Nice. That's a success. And the 12 volt cigarette lighter plug doodad is in. I suspect we've got way more USB charger doohickeys here than we'll ever need, but yeah, they're nice to have. Most of our charging of small devices, batteries, cameras and stuff like that is going to happen here on the side of the kitchen island in something we haven't built yet. We should get the plywood for that next week, and I think it's going to be pretty dang spiffy and give us super easy access to cameras and stuff like that. We'll leave the DC outlets task in doing because I had to cannibalize one of our DC outlets in the forward cabin because of that hole I drilled in the wrong location. So yeah, we can't close that yet, but we can get started on this one, nav station backrest. There are a lot of things we need to finish here at the nav station, like for instance put on some formica on this surface here, put in the side of the nav station, clean this hole up here, and add this backrest. Bam! To quote Ava, the nav station now looks official. I have the formica we're going to put on the table, and I also have the little piece of plywood that's going to finish off the outside of the nav station, but let's hold off on doing that until next weekend.
Today's the day we get to break out the Sailrite. Before we left Denmark, we bought these 2 rectangular shaped mattress protectors, and well, since the V-berth is V-shaped, they don't fit very well. So today I'm going to sew these and alter them a little bit so they fit. Our first big canvas project is going to be a cover for the stay sail, but we're not sure what we're going to do with it yet, so we can't start that project yet.
Athena has what's called a club-footed stay sail, so that means there's this boom here, which is great for many reasons. But one issue we have is the clearance underneath here. Here on the foredeck is really the only place we can store our dinghy when we're offshore. but there's not enough room for the dinghy down below the boom. So what we're thinking about doing is raising the boom, but that also means shortening the boom a little bit. When the boom swings out, it just barely clears this stay, and if we're going to be bringing the boom up, it's going to go further aft. So we have to shorten the boom, and of course that's going to change the shape of whatever canvas we're going to use to cover up the sail.
Matt's actually got me this for my birthday, but this is the first time I've been able to take it out for a spin. For those of you who are unfamiliar, Sailrite sewing machines are high-performing and heavy-duty sewing machines. They can sew through sailcloth and heavy-duty canvas, and they're pretty compact and portable for what they're able to do. Overall, there are two different models. This one is the LSZ1, and it's able to sew straight and zigzag seams. And fun fact, the Z in the name stands for zigzag, so you know which machine you're working with. Another reason why I love Sailrite is because they have an extensive library of sewing projects and videos on how to use their machine. So if you have no experience sewing or using a sewing machine, their videos will help you through every step. I've already watched all the videos and set her up, so let's get this baby going. We had a grand plan of laying the mattress protector out flat on the pontoon and using this template that we made a while back, but surprise, surprise, it's raining in the UK, so we can't take it outside, but we just laid it out here and fold the edges over, and I think that'll work just fine. This baby is done, and if I do say so myself, she's looking pretty dang spiffy. And now, to complete our bed upgrade, we also got a new sheet.
Buying sheets for a house is super easy. It's not until you live on a boat you realize that, wait a minute, not all mattresses are like the ones you find in a house. And then it's really nice that somebody makes shaped, fitted sheets. We haven't tried this one yet, so we don't know if it's any good, but there certainly are a lot of different shapes and sizes. While I was messing about with the water filter under the sink last week, I also hooked up our washing machine, so that should be fully functional now. And here we go. What sweet, sweet luxury. There's one tiny part of the washing machine installation that's not really done yet, and that is to plumb in this hose here. I'm just looking for the right fittings, but for now the water will just drain here to the sink, and that's perfectly fine. The washing machine is fairly quiet even during its spin cycle. I know the sailing purists out there are shaking their heads, but I am really happy we installed this thing. Next step for the sheet is into the dryer. This is not a vented model. It's got a heat pump in there, so it's pretty efficient, and yeah, it seems to work fairly well. We've got a dehumidifier running in the saloon, and I'll just crack a hatch in here, and moisture shouldn't really be an issue. I don't know if we messed up by putting the sheet in the dryer, because it did seem like it was a little too small to actually fit our mattress, so we're not going to be closing the sheets task yet. There's a task here for a mattress topper. I don't think we're gonna get one of those. We have the mattress protector on there now, and the mattress does seem perfectly comfortable, so let's close that one. And then we have a task down here that's called high water alarm. I am really excited for our first canvas project, that sail cover for the stay sail, but that will have to wait until we figure out how to modify the boom. So yeah, let's get started on the high water alarm. The high water alarm is based around one of these Ultima switches. We also have a loose Ultima switch here that will fit later this winter for our emergency bilge pump. But back to the high water alarm. So it consists of the Ultima switch and this little panel. The switch on the panel here has three settings. There's armed, off, and test. If the switch is pushed to armed and the sensor sees water, then there'll be a red light flashing here, and there'll also be a presumably very annoying sound coming out of this thing. If the switch isn't off, then the alarm won't sound, but this thing will still blink red. I think this little guy is going to give us some peace of mind. Right now we only have one automatic electric bilge pump. In case that fails, I'd like to know about it, and also in case it starts seeing more water than it can keep up with, I'd also like to know about it. So yeah, let's go ahead and install this little guy. Wiring the sensor to the panel is very easy. It is just two wires. But I do think it's going to be easier for me to do up here on the kitchen island compared to down in the bilge. This ain't my first rodeo, and before I cut a hole for this thing, I want to make absolutely sure everything works. I've got the sensor and the panel wired up temporarily with some Wago nuts. If I put two fingers here, we should see the thing light up. Yep, there we go. And let's also test the presumably very annoying buzzer. So here we go. That is very annoying indeed. Speaking of annoying, there is a protective plastic film over the panel here, which is good, but the switch and the sound doohickey is mounted on top of it, so you can't remove the plastic film without removing the switch and the speaker doodad. Would have been nice if there had been some black screws included with the panel, but there weren't, so for now we'll just use these stainless ones. The high water alarm is all hooked up and fully functional. Yep, it's very loud. Let's go ahead and close the high water alarm task, and then the next task has a little bit of a confusing name. It's named Fill Hole. Here underneath the companionway we've got this round hole. My original plan was to fill it with some plywood, ferret, and then we'd be ready for paint. But that plan has changed a little bit. That round hole used to house a battery monitor, and when we were tidying up aboard the boat we found this guy that I purchased 5 years ago. And it would actually be kind of cool to have this installed. Here at the nav station we've got our super fancy Servo GX display to monitor both AC and 24 volts, but right now we don't have anything to monitor 12 volts. We could add a smart shunt and connect it to the Servo GX via VE Direct, and that would get the information to the Servo box. But there is no way of displaying that information on the display. The combination of that little quirk, us having a hole that needs to be filled that's the exact size of a battery monitor, and then finding the battery monitor certainly makes me want to install this guy. Now we could of course add a second Servo box and a second display, but that's going to be pricey, and for what we're going to get I don't think it's worth it. This guy is going to do everything we need to do. The BMV 702 is still being sold, so it's not like it's a super outdated piece of technology. And on the back of the display there is what looks like a little VE Direct port, so we can also connect this up to the Servo box, which I don't know if we'll need, but it's certainly fun. What we need from this little guy is pretty simple. We want to monitor state of charge on our 12 volt house bank, and then we want to monitor voltage on our starter battery, just as an indication to make sure everything is okay. State of charge is monitored with a shunt, just as with any other battery monitor I'm familiar with, and voltage is just, well, a direct connection. But when we're messing around with the 12 volt battery, there's another thing I want to change, and that is to replace the 12 volt battery itself. Now, the old one is definitely not dead yet, but it's no spring chicken. We do have some critical systems on the 12 volt side, so I'm going to consider this a bit of preemptive maintenance and replace the battery before it fully collapses. This way, I hope we won't have any issues crossing the Atlantic. This is the old battery, there's the new one, exact same style, so it's super easy to replace. Except for the weight. There is absolutely nothing easy about the weight. I connected the shunt to the batteries as per the instructions. Let's see what happens when we connect the display. So far so good. There's a little bit of text scrolling past here that says capacity. That's a good sign. Our battery is 140 amp hours, so let's go ahead and put that in there like that. After a tiny bit of configuration, the battery monitor now seems to work, so let's go ahead and get this installed. And that is a nice snug fit. Now on next weekend's to-do list is to paint all of this to make it look nice, but at least now I don't have to worry about filling that hole. That is the fill hole task all done. There is another task up here on the board that we can close, and I'm a little bummed out about that, and that is this one, the wind vane. Up here on the cabin top we have all of the parts of Athena's old wind vane. A wind vane is a mechanical instrument that steers the boat without any kind of electricity or microprocessors or anything like that. This is a Hydrovane, and I was really hoping that we could get this back on Athena and start using it, but we can't. We have all of the parts here. There's one thing that we'd have to upgrade, and that is the diameter of the shaft over there, because this is an older model when Hydrovane used to build two different models, one for smaller boats and bigger boats, and for whatever reason the one that was fitted on Athena was the smaller version, which is too small for her. So yeah, we'd have to make some upgrades to this, but that's not the reason why we can't use it. Unlike the servo pendulum type wind vanes, the Hydrovane steers only using the power of the wind, which is why the vane for it is so ginormous. Now Hydrovane does offer a stubby version of their vane, which I thought we were going to be able to fit underneath the arch, but it turns out we can't. I've been emailing back and forth with Hydrovane, and the only other option is to place the vane on top of the solar panels. That's gonna look kind of ridiculous. It's gonna cause all kinds of issues with shading. And yeah, also we don't have room for that between the solar panels, so that's a no-go. I think we might be able to fit one of the servo pendulum type wind vanes because their vanes are a little bit smaller, but that is not something we've budgeted for this year, and they are a little bit pricey, so that might have to wait. Now what we can do now is just order an extra drive unit for our electronic Garmin autopilot and just carry that in case something happens out in the middle of the Atlantic. But yeah, no Hydrovane for us. Next week I hope to finally be able to get the companionway up to snuff, meaning getting all of this varnished and painted so it's no longer a giant eyesore. I also hope to be able to finish most of the nav station. This little hole up here is going to have to wait a little bit longer, but other than that we should be able to make some progress. I also want to prep for our flooring, so that's going to be painting the toe kicks, reinforcing a small section of the cabin sole, and if we're lucky enough to get our hands on some plywood, I want to build the little battery storage charging area here on the side of the kitchen island, which I think is going to be really awesome.
But for now, let's end this week's video right here.
Yep, we hope to see all of you guys back here aboard Athena next week for yet more DIY fun. As always, feel free to leave a comment down below, and don't forget, if you've enjoyed this video,
Please remember to leave a like.
see you!